It's Monday, the 30th of October 2023. Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed Business News, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Adam Lang, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Morning, Adam.
Sean, at story number 1, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, at the end of his trip to the USA and ahead of this week's China tour, yesterday said Australia had a role to build guardrails between the militaries of the world's 2 largest economies.
Albanese said Australia's relationship with China is important because they're our major trading partner, taking about 25% of our export dollars. US is Australia's largest two-way investment partner, and that relationship is important economically as well as strategically. It's a fine line Australia and the Prime Minister walk, and Albanese said Canberra and Beijing will cooperate where we can and disagree where we must. He said the two countries disagree on the basis of our political systems, on human rights, on issues of access to the South China Sea and the Taiwan Straits, and he'll continue to put those positions strongly, clearly and directly to China. Having straight talks with Beijing is an important way to build our relationship with China, Albanese said.
Sean, what did the Prime Minister have to say about his trip to the USA?
Well, in fact, he spoke lots yesterday about global affairs. So let's start with the USA. He said he's confident the US Congress will pass the necessary legislation to allow the manufacture of AUKUS submarines. Albanese also said he'd raised the case of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, with US President Joe Biden repeating his stance that the Australians' detention should be brought to a conclusion. Meanwhile, locally, thousands of people have attended rallies in Melbourne and Sydney in a show of solidarity with Israel to ask for the release of hostages being held in the Gaza. And Adam, there are also reports yesterday on Bloomberg that the European Union and Australia are heading into a critical round of free trade talks, with both sides warning that a failure to strike a deal now could delay any potential agreement by months or even years. Talks broke down 3 months ago, but EU Trade Commissioner Valdis Dombrovskis and Australia's Trade Minister Don Farrell met in Japan over the weekend.
Sean, story number 2, auction clearance rates have fallen to their lowest level in 7 months following last week's higher than expected inflation figures and the subsequent increasing likelihood of a rate rise next week.
Preliminary results show 68.5% of the reported auctions across the combined capital cities were successful. That's 2.3 percentage points lower than the previous week. That's quite a fall. Remember, it's spring selling season. That's prime time for auctions. Not just interest rates to blame, though. Part of the reason, no doubt, is that the number of auctions surged to nearly 3,400, the largest volume since before Easter last year. In Sydney, the clearance rate fell 3.4 percentage points to 70.8. Now there were 20% more auctions. Melbourne was impressive. The clearance rate held steady at 68.6%, notwithstanding a massive 50% rise in auction volumes. In Brisbane, it was 58.9%. Adelaide, 85.1%.
Sean, story number 3, the number of motorbikes on the road has fallen, but the number of scooters has risen.
So a total of just under 69,000 motorcycles, or what's known as off-highway vehicles, were sold in the first 9 months of this year, according to the Federal Chamber of Automotive Industries. That's off more than 2% from last year, but in actual fact, motorbike sales are enjoying a purple patch, in part due to COVID. The local two-wheeler market is considered mature and generally stable. That means about 70 to 80,000 units are sold every year. 2021, that went to 94,000. Last year was about 90,000. It'll still be much higher than that 70 to 80,000 range this year. In terms of the leading manufacturer, I know you're asking me, Adam, Honda number 1, then Yamaha, KTM and Kawasaki. The scooter market is what's growing, small, 6.4% of total sales, but they're up 9% this year compared to 2022.
Sean, story number 4, supermarket giant Aldi is facing a class action for allegedly deliberate underpayments of more than 20,000 workers, totalling $150 million.
A lot of money. The Shop Distributive and Allied Employees Association has launched the legal action in the federal court alleging Aldi breached workplace laws over 6 years by requiring its employees to work up to 30 minutes before their shift without pay. The tasks include till changes, cashing up the register, performing safety checks, emptying bins, blah, blah. You know what I mean? That's according to the Financial Review. The Shop Distributors Association is claiming that these practices were deliberate and systemic, meaning Aldi could face significant penalties. It estimates the average worker could be eligible for $7,500 in compensation. Now, the case follows on from a federal court ruling in 2022, which found that Aldi underpaid workers at a New South Wales distribution centre by directing them to start work 15 minutes before their rostered start time.
Sean, a great story at number 5. Taylor Swift is now officially a billionaire with the success of her Eras tour and the movie associated with it, pushing her into super rich status.
She's one of the few entertainers to reach the $1 billion mark, according to Bloomberg News. And it's not just her singing, it's her marketing as well. Bloomberg said Taylor Swift's Eras tour has generated as much money as the economies of small countries. The movie version is ruling the box office. Her new recording of a 9-year-old album, 1989, is expected to be one of the hottest selling records of the year. In fact, she re-recorded her first 6 albums this year. The singer's 53 US concerts this year added $4.3 billion to the country's GDP. What's it all mean? Well, her music catalogue's worth about $400 million, concerts $370 million, streaming $120 million, the value of her 5 properties $110 million, and $80 million from record sales. Well and truly a billionaire.
That's it, the top 5 business stories in just 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Adam.
It's Monday the 30th of October 2023. Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and if 5 minutes isn't enough, then find our longer podcast called Fear and Greed on your favourite podcast platform. I'm Adam Lang, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great day.